Conor McGregor's rise in the world of MMA is nothing short of remarkable. In just 2 years, he went from being a nobody to a global superstar. McGregor isn't just a fighter, he's a guy who thrives on trash talk, flashy entrances, and bold claims. Outside the octagon, he's known for his whiskey brand and his ability to dominate headlines. But beyond the fame and controversies, how does McGregor rank as an MMA fighter? Is he as skilled as his reputation suggests, or is his legacy built more on hype than substance? In this breakdown, we'll take a close look at his strengths, weaknesses, achievements, and how he's remembered today. McGregor's most defining skill is his ability to strike with pinpoint accuracy. His left hand in particular has earned him countless victories and highlights in the UFC. His striking is more than just powerful, it's strategic and precise. One of McGregor's most iconic moments came at UFC 194 in 2015. Facing Jose Aldo, a fighter who hadn't lost in over a decade, McGregor ended the fight in just 13 seconds. He anticipated Aldo's attack, countered with a perfectly timed left hand, and became the featherweight champion. This knockout is still one of the most memorable moments in MMA history. At UFC 205 in 2016, McGregor faced lightweight champion Eddie Alvarez. In a masterful performance, McGregor showcased his precision, striking by landing clean punches and using angles to completely outclass Alvarez. This fight made him the first fighter in UFC history to hold 2 championship belts at the same time, solidifying his place in MMA history. McGregor's ability to read his opponents is another key strength. He studies their movements and habits, then capitalizes on their mistakes. His mental warfare outside the cage, through trash talk and psychological tactics, often leaves opponents rattled before the fight even begins. McGregor's striking is unique in that it combines traditional boxing fundamentals with unorthodox movements. This combination confuses opponents and makes it difficult for them to prepare. Fighters who don't study McGregor's style often find themselves overwhelmed by his timing and creativity. While McGregor excels in striking, his grappling and wrestling skills have always been his Achilles heel. Against fighters with strong wrestling backgrounds, he has struggled to defend takedowns and control the pace on the ground. At UFC 229 in 2018, McGregor faced Khabib, one of the best wrestlers in MMA history. Khabib took McGregor to the ground repeatedly, dominating the fight and eventually finishing it with a neck crank in the 4th round. This fight exposed McGregor's vulnerability in grappling situations. McGregor's stamina has been another recurring issue throughout his career. While he often starts fights strong, his energy tends to fade in later rounds. At UFC 196, McGregor faced Nate Diaz in a welterweight bout. After a strong first round, McGregor's cardio failed him, and Diaz took advantage. In the 2nd round, Diaz submitted McGregor with a rear naked choke. This loss highlighted McGregor's struggles with endurance during high-pressure fights. Unlike some legendary fighters who continue to improve and evolve, McGregor's style has remained largely the same. Fighters like Georges St-Pierre and John Jones adapted to changing opponents and situations throughout their careers, which contributed to their long-term success. McGregor, on the other hand, has struggled to maintain his early dominance. One reason for this lack of adaptation is his heavy reliance on his signature striking style, his nasty left hand, without developing a more diverse skill set. Over time, opponents have studied his game, learned how to counter his moves, and exploited his weaknesses, particularly in grappling and endurance. Additionally, his preference for controlling fights with his timing and distance hasn't evolved much to account for fighters with better rounded skills or higher pressure strategies. If McGregor were to adapt, the possibilities could be game-changing. By expanding his skill set, especially in wrestling and ground control, he could neutralize opponents who exploit his current weaknesses. Furthermore, adding more versatility to his striking, such as incorporating leg kicks or feints, could make him far less predictable. With a willingness to embrace change, he might regain his competitive edge and extend his career, much like other champions who thrived by reinventing themselves. However, without adaptation, his success may continue to fade as younger, more dynamic fighters surpass him. He became the first fighter in UFC history to hold two championship belts simultaneously, winning titles in the featherweight and lightweight divisions. However, since achieving this historic milestone, McGregor has struggled to defend or reclaim his titles. In fact, a glaring omission in his career is that he never defended any of his UFC titles, a key measure of greatness in the sport. Fighters like Khabib Nurmagomedov, Alexander Volkanovski, and Anderson Silva have defended their belts multiple times, cementing their legacies in a way McGregor has not. His fights have broken multiple pay-per-view records, and he's one of the highest-paid athletes in the world. While his fame has brought MMA into the global spotlight, it has also led to questions about his commitment to the sport. Critics argue that his celebrity status may have taken precedence over his training and evolution as a fighter, potentially limiting his ability to remain dominant in the UFC. In 2017, McGregor stepped into the boxing ring to face Floyd Mayweather in a highly publicized match. While he lost, the fight generated massive attention and showcased McGregor's ability to transcend MMA. However, his foray into boxing also highlighted a shift in focus that some feel pulled him away from the discipline required for sustained success in the UFC. If McGregor were to redirect his focus back to the core aspects of MMA, training, refining his skills, and adapting to the ever-evolving competition, he could potentially build upon these accomplishments and address the gaps in his legacy. Defending a title, for instance, would silence many critics and elevate his standing among the sport's all-time greats. Without this shift, however, his impressive resume may ultimately feel like a story of potential left unfulfilled. McGregor's influence on MMA is undeniable. He brought the sport to a global audience, attracting fans who had never watched MMA before. His personality, confidence, and willingness to take risks made him a superstar. But his legacy isn't without flaws. Since his peak years, 2013 to 2016, McGregor's performances have declined. His losses to Dustin Poirier in 2021 and his lackluster return to the octagon have raised questions about his ability to compete at the highest level. Widely regarded as one of the most complete fighters in MMA history, GSP combined elite wrestling, striking, and fight IQ to dominate the welterweight division for years. His ability to adapt to opponents' strengths and implement strategic game plans set him apart. Unlike McGregor, who built his career on explosiveness and charisma, GSP's legacy is rooted in his consistency and disciplined approach. While McGregor's popularity surged due to his brash persona and striking finishes, GSP's quieter but dominant reign showcased a different path to legendary status. Silva's reign as the UFC middleweight champion is one of the longest in the promotion's history, featuring 16 consecutive wins. Known for his creative striking, pinpoint accuracy, and almost otherworldly ability to read his opponents, Silva created highlight reel moments that defined an era. In contrast to McGregor, whose peak years were relatively short-lived, Silva demonstrated sustained dominance over a much longer period. Where McGregor relied on explosive left-hand knockouts and psychological warfare, Silva's artistry in the octagon redefined what was possible in MMA. The youngest champion in UFC history, Jones revolutionized the light heavyweight division with his innovative techniques and seemingly untouchable skill set. His ability to adapt mid-fight, utilize his physical attributes, and outthink his opponents makes him one of the most influential fighters in MMA history. Unlike McGregor, whose career has been a mix of meteoric highs and subsequent struggles, Jones has remained undefeated in competition, with only a controversial disqualification loss. While McGregor's appeal has often extended beyond the sport due to his media-savvy persona, Jones's legacy is firmly tied to his dominance and creativity inside the cage. Conor McGregor's career is a story of extremes. At his peak, he was one of the most electrifying fighters in MMA history, combining precision, power, and charisma. His ability to sell fights and captivate audiences was unmatched, and his achievements inside the octagon are significant. However, McGregor's weaknesses, his grappling, cardio, and inability to adapt, have prevented him from reaching the same level as other all-time greats like Georges St-Pierre or Jon Jones. His career was spectacular but short-lived, with his prime years spanning just a few years. Ultimately, McGregor's legacy goes beyond his fighting skills. He transformed MMA, brought it into the mainstream, and inspired a new generation of fighters. While he may not rank among the top 10 fighters of all time, his impact on the sport is undeniable. If you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to check out my other video on McGregor's loses. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more.